Brandel Chamblee, Golf Channel lead studio analyst. He's out of the studio and he's at LACC, one of my favorite golf courses, the North, of course. He joins us now on the program. Brandel, what would you shoot if you played LACC?
From the tips?
Yeah.
I'd probably have a hard time breaking 80.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of golfers that are going to have a hard time trying to break 80. I think that's a tough golf course, but this is what the U.S. Open wants. Is that correct, that par is going to be your friend?
Yeah, it's a spectacular design, Dan. If you've played it, it's all the buzz. This is a town that likes a good nip and tuck, and this golf course has had a nip and tuck, so to speak. It's had in the golf architecture world, a far and wide lauded nip and tuck, and it's architectural eye candy. But I think it's going to play spectacularly for the players. Big, wide fairways for the most part. But if you miss the fairways, you're going to pay a tough price. But it's the green complexes that are just out of this world. If this golf course were on the ocean, it'd probably be ranked, if not the best golf course in the world, right there behind Pine Valley.
Yeah, I agree. I've played it a few times, and I'm just playing from the member tees, and it's challenging. But I told the audience, you'll be surprised that the rolling hills, you're not getting flat lies there, that it's got far more undulation than you would expect at a golf course out there.
That's true. I mean, people whose job it is to dwell on architecture and so forth say that this is probably the best parkland site imaginable for an architect. And, obviously this was 100 or so years ago. It's Gil Hanse's line. Gil Hanse said that this golf course, I believe it's paraphrasing a little bit, but I think he said this was the finest architecture that he's ever seen. And he's seen more than his share.
And then you start to figure out who's a favorite at an event like this. I know that Scotty Scheffler, DraftKings has him as the favorite, then John Rahm, and then Rory and Brooks are thrown in there, and Patrick Cantlay. What do you think of that lineup there?
I think DraftKings nailed it. You always look at the best players, but when you get to a venue like this where the fairways are so wide and there's ample room to just air it out for the best drivers and the longest hitters in the game. But then there's this really high demand for precision coming into these greens. I mean, they're small targets, they're angled. There's a big price to pay if you miss them. And Scotty Scheffler right now he's almost as far, just in terms of ball striking. The distance between him and everybody else is almost Tiger 2000 and everybody else in terms of ball striking. So Scheffler leads, strokes gained off the tee, leads strokes gained approach. He hits more greens than anybody. At the Memorial, it was the second best performance ever, strokes gained tee to green, and he didn't win because he's putting like you and me probably. If he just puts decent, he should win this event. He could win it going away.
We're talking to Brandel Chamblee, and you can have the coverage, the U.S. Open. It'll be from Los Angeles, LACC. It'll be on NBC. Also, the wrap-up show that is a wonderful show that Brandel's there with Rich Lerner and company. That's after every round. You can see it nightly. The drama from last week, the fallout, and you've had time to soak this in. How has that time period helped or hurt your thoughts on this merger with LIV and PGA Tour?
Well, I'm sure like everybody that heard this, they thought they were being punked. I did, for sure. But now that I've had some time to talk to the people that were really close to this deal, I said the other night that probably the second worst thing that could happen to golf is if this deal went through, and probably the worst thing that could happen to golf is if it didn't go through. The plight of the PGA Tour was such that, they were hemorrhaging money in legal fees and also in trying to sustain these purses to compete with LIV, to keep players from being poached and going over to LIV. They weren't supported by the ratings. The ratings are fine in golf. Golf's in a great spot, but they don't justify $25 million purses. And the reward expectations of the tour players have been reset, I should say, to unsustainable levels. So when you look at the economics and you look at the fact that LIV was not going to go anywhere, the Saudis weren't going to go anywhere, it seems more understandable that the deal was made. But there's still this impression that the tour sold the professional game to the Saudis, and that is the pervading impression in all of golf right now.
Do you believe that?
Well, when you dig into the details, not the actual PGA Tours we know it, this investment arm that they've created, this new entity that's yet to have any specific goals. Yeah, and look, the Saudis came into the European Tour as just a tournament. And the next thing you know, they wanted to run everything, and so now they're in the room as the majority investor. I think it's pretty easy to look down the line and think that they could exercise undue influence in the game of golf. And when you consider that there were other economic solutions, no doubt I know of the economic solutions. I've talked to people that have offered the PGA Tour some money, and everybody gets enamored with this PIF fund for having $650 billion. And they're quick to say that they have all the money in the world. But I've talked to a lot of financial people in the last week, and they laugh at that. They're like, there is $140 trillion of good, clean, somewhat honest money all around the globe, and a lot of it is very interested in aligning themselves with the PGA Tour. So there are other good, clean economic solutions that the PGA Tour could have considered. And if the deal doesn't go through, I'd say it's back on the table. And I think that would be far more amenable to the golf public and to the tour players.
I've tried to approach this as just a golf fan, that I don't think they had altruistic motives starting the LIV Tour. And Greg Norman, he had a vendetta against the PGA Tour. So I was disappointed. You can take the money. I don't care. Go take the money. But I only cared about watching golf. I wanted to see the best players. And I'm wondering what the game is going to be like in 3 years from now.
Well, if the deal goes through, it's likely that LIV will be dissolved, and the players that had played on LIV will have to sort of work their way back into the PGA Tour. They'll have to pay a substantial fine, no doubt. But it'd be great to have Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson back. It'd be great to have Phil Mickelson back. These are interesting players. They were poached for a reason. They had tremendous appeal. But if the deal doesn't go through, Dan, then your guess is almost as good as mine, because if the deal doesn't go through, innumerable things could happen, a lot of them bad. Players that felt betrayed could jump ship, go to LIV, give them more leverage. It could go that way. It could go the way that I sort of hinted at a minute ago. All of this economic investment, these economic solutions that by and large is, let's say, just a lot cleaner than the Saudi money, could come into the game and stave off those potential defections. But if it doesn't go through, your guess is as good as mine.
Have you crossed paths with Brooks Koepka? He had the line soon as it came out, welfare check on Chamblee. Phil Mickelson has had some problems with you. Do you cross paths with these guys at the U.S. Open?
I walked the course a couple of days ago right behind Phil all day long. If I'd asked him to come up on the set. He wanted to come up on the set and debate and talk about LIV. I said, look, the seat's always welcome for you. Love to have you up. At least from my view, if maybe there was something I didn't know about LIV, he could come up because he's so invested in it. He could sell it, maybe make more money for everybody on those teams. I would be interested to hear the teams. He said, look, I don't want to help you guys make any money. I'm not coming up. So he offered a Pierce Morgan interview, which coincides with the U.S. Women's Open, which I'm working. So I had friends of mine reach out to him. I said, look, I'll sit down with you on a podcast anytime, anywhere, and talk about LIV all you want. But look, they're going to take their shots at me. The day they took their shots at me was, what was that? That was the Tuesday, the day it came out, which was ironic, really, because, the next day in talking to the people that had a lot to do with this deal, like, if this deal goes through, LIV's going to die. Those guys could very easily just have lost their jobs, lost at least 1/3 of their contract money, and have to then come back, and their boss would be whoever the commissioner of the PGA Tour is. When there was news yesterday that Jay's taken some time away to deal with some health issues, and we certainly wish him the best. But let's say Jay recuperates and is still at the helm. They have to come through Jay Monahan, who, I'm not sure he's going to be too lenient in dishing out their fines to come back, because you could make the argument, I certainly make it, that they've harmed the PGA Tour in irreparable ways.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just like, how much can you fine Brooks Koepka if he wants to come back to the PGA Tour?
Well, it's been floated around. I think everybody pretty much knows what he left for. So take the taxes away, and there's your fine. You can't irreparably damage the PGA Tour, benefit financially from it, be involved in legal issues along the way, which cost the PGA Tour loads of money, which otherwise would have been reinvested in the tour or pension funds or purses, and expect to come back and still have the upper hand financially with the people you're competing against.
But could you see Rory getting equity in the PGA Tour and John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler?
That's the thing. Look, if this deal doesn't go through, and I was reading today, just before I came on your show, CNBC was reporting that PGA Tour players are considering outside bankers to take a look at this deal. Any outside bankers or investment that may come into the PGA Tour, I would say, would be a heck of a lot more rational than the investment from the Saudi side. And the reward expectations, as I just said a little while ago, have been reset amongst PGA Tour players to unsustainable levels. And to re-anchor those reward expectations to reality is going to be difficult to do. But any investor that comes in is not going to say, look, we are not playing for $25 million purses unless the ratings support that. These people would understandably want a profit, whereas all that the Saudis wanted was to launder their reputation, which, if the deal goes through and you have the head of the Saudi investment fund on the PGA Tour board, I would say job well done. You did it. You've laundered the reputation of a reprehensible, unconscionable regime.
Are you welcomed in Saudi Arabia?
I don't plan on going to Riyadh anytime soon. But
I'm just curious.
But look, I think, this is not about the Saudi people. I have no doubt they're exactly like us. They're, the vast majority of them want to have a job, want to have good health care, raise their kids, put food on the table, and have a nice time in the evenings. I'm talking about the apocalyptically radical leaders, and in particular MBS, who, his human rights record is not particularly good.
Play nice this week, okay?
I hope we'll have a controversy-free week.
No. You want controversy. You want that on the course. You want that, right?
Yeah, on the course, of course. But I wouldn't mind, some nice quiet evenings, where my phone's not blowing. My wife would appreciate that.
Maybe Mickelson just sneaks by one time and stops by the set.
He's always welcome on the set.
I'm sure he is.
For all our conflicts, I quite enjoy the man's golf.
Great to talk to you, Brandel. Have fun. We'll be watching. That's Brandel Chamblee, Golf Channel lead analyst, and they'll be on coverage this entire weekend, nearly 20 hours of weekend coverage on NBC, and, of course, Golf Channel and the wrap-up shows. They have championship coverage Thursday and Friday from 4 to 6 Eastern.